And he was like, Sophie, I need a leopard for the Harper's Bazaar shoot. Book me one. Walks out and I'm like, okay, Google, how to rent a leopard. Like, what? All right, you guys, welcome back to Rich Artist Fridays. I'm so excited. Best day of the week, at least for me. I'm over here in Brooklyn, New York. So for me, it's 10:30 a.m., but wherever you are in the world, I'm really happy you're tuning in. I hope you're having a nice morning or a nice day, regardless of what time it is where you are. Yeah, our Rich Artist Fridays are our 30-minute quickies. And last week we did sort of a new, like I tested out something new that was more like story time related to my time of interning and assisting photographers. My first long-term internship was here in New York City for 6 months. And that time was so crazy and so formative for me. In the way that my career ended up going afterwards and the people that I got to meet and the lessons that I learned from that. But I have also, since then gone on to assist other photographers and was a studio manager for a photographer in Berlin. And you guys seem to love that story time. That time I was just saying to one of you guys that I was chatting with, how crazy of a world that is, how like foreign of a world it is to a lot of people. And I know to me it was always this like parallel universe almost that I was trying to get my foot in the door with, and was so desperate to be given a chance at and get to play fly on the wall and watch the greats do what they do and learn about what it's like to be on set, but also like what is that, like what is the day-to-day of a photographer that brings in multiple million a year look like, and what does it look like internally for him, like how is his office run, how many employees does he have, all of these things. And I started the Rich Artist Friday program, or the Rich Artist program in general. We do workshops and group workshops and all of that stuff as well, so that I could honestly share those experiences with you guys. I felt really privileged that I had the time and the resources to dedicate 6 months to interning for free. And had I not done that and gotten that opportunity, I don't think I would have moved on to assisting and like knowing how to get those jobs and knowing how to work my way up the ladder in that hierarchy, and then ultimately, stop assisting and just work as a freelancer. And also it's just fun to talk about. I mean, some of the things that you experience when you're just a fly on the wall on a set of like 40 to 80 people, it's just absolute mayhem. Like it's not a normal job, and sometimes I forget that. And I'm assuming some of you might feel the same as I did back then, where it's like, well, what is that like? Who is in those rooms? Like, yeah, like what does that look like, and what can we learn from it? What can we take away? And I know that you don't have to make the experiences that I have in order to be successful as a photographer. But if you guys can learn from my experiences, also learn from my mistakes, maybe avoid some of the mistakes that I had to make along the way, then that's worth it to me. So that's what we're doing. And today we're going to do another little like story time for you guys, because you guys loved that last week. Last week we talked about specifically interning and assisting photographers. And then I thought, well, a good extension of that would be lessons from a photographer's office. Also, I'm streaming this live on Instagram for the first time. So if you guys are in here in the live, feel free to ask me questions or give feedback or chime in. Same as to you guys here in the live. I love hearing a little bit of feedback or getting some reactions from you guys. So yeah, but besides that, I just thought I'd tell you a little bit about the time that I interned for, not interned, I was a studio manager for a photographer in Berlin, and he was is still a really famous photographer. And I worked for him while I was still in college studying photography. It was my part-time side job. And that was really formative for me as well. I obviously got to be on his sets whenever he was shooting as well, but that wasn't my main job. My main job wasn't to be like a lighting assistant or a digitech like I did here in New York City. I was more in charge of like his office staff, and sort of answering his emails and sort of prepping for shoots and prepping his taxes, for example. Like that was the first time that I was sort of doing like accountant work in the photography world, which was kind of crazy. And I'm so glad I did. I mean, it wasn't like my dream job. Like obviously getting to be on set and like watch the photo shoots and stuff is way more fun than like sitting there answering emails, prepping taxes. But I'm so glad I got to do it because like my whole filing system and the way that I run my business internally is completely like a copy of how he did it, because it's the only business structure that I was ever shown. And like, I didn't learn this in college, even though I think we totally should. But that's why I'm doing this, so that I have a class on internal business structures as part of this 8-week program that I do. But had I not watched him like set up his own business, I wouldn't have known how to do that for myself. And yeah, that time was really, really crazy because he is a freelancer, but he's not just one person that just works for himself and by himself. Like, he had such a big crew of people, of freelancers that he would hire and of internal people. Yeah, I don't even know where I should start. Maybe just like the background story of how I got that job. I was in college. It was my last year of college, I believe. Yes, it was my last year of college. And I really wanted a separate job outside of university. And I that year before that, I worked at a lawyer's office. And I wanted to blow my brains out every 5 minutes, which was a good learning lesson too. So I was like, okay, that one's not for me. I really wanted to do something related to photography. And I think he had emailed our university office letting them know that he was looking for a studio manager. And I think they sent that out in like a blast email to all of the photography students. And this guy was really famous at that time, especially because he was always on Germany's Next Top Model, which is like the copycat version of America's Next Top Model. But so he as a persona also was kind of famous, not just his work. So a lot of photography students obviously knew who he was. And I applied and I got the job. And funnily, a girl that was also in my class ended up landing an internship with him at the same time that I landed the studio manager position. So we both had our day one, I think, on the same day, which was kind of cool. So I already knew somebody. And the way that he ran his internal office was he had, like, in the building that he lived in the basement, he had a photo studio. And then the level above that was his office space, which had his office, his wife's office, because his wife is a costume designer that he works with. Then it had like my office. And then it had like the back office that had his post-production manager, and then typically like 2 interns. So overall, we were always at least like 4, 5, 6 people in the office on a day-to-day. That's also where, he kept all of his digital gear. He had this like huge safe with all of his like really expensive equipment in it. And then I had my desk. And then his office sort of had like a filing system sort of like that as well. So I was sort of in between my office and his office. And I was doing that part-time, but honestly, that job was very much like a full-time job. But some of the things that I would do for him would be like open all of his mail and then like categorize it into what it was for, like tax stuff, bills, things that he needed to tend to directly, things that would go on his desk, things that I would file away in his cabinets. And like, guys, whenever I would prep his taxes for his like his actual accountants to do, like that was one of the things that like blew my mind the most. Is like every single month I would have one of the, like when you're in a lawyer's office and they have like the thick binders, like the thick sturdy ones with the like big rings. I would fill one of those binders every single month just with the things that he could deduct from his taxes, because like I said, it wasn't just him like going out to a business lunch or like having expenses for a photo shoot. It was like receipts upon receipts upon receipts, and he would just dump them on my desk. So every day I would come in and I would have this like pile of receipts that I needed to go through and categorize and digitalize. He had this like really elaborate very detailed system like on the computer, a filing system for all of the different sections of his business, I think is the best term for it. Like invoices from assistants, like production filing and like all of the stuff that goes into like the actual photo shoots, and then like so many other things, like things to do with his licensing agency, his actual agent, like the other artists that he would work with, obviously all of the legal people that he would hire for himself. Like we're talking like productions of like 150,000 euros upwards. And a lot of my work was also sort of just keeping an overview on all of the planning and the pre-production for all the shoots that we had coming up, which is why I said like, oh, it would have been good for it to be a full-time job, because I would come in and I wouldn't have been in over the weekend, and then maybe like 1 or 2 days of the week had already started, and then I would come in and I would be constantly playing catch up. And after I left that position, he did hire somebody full-time. I'm still glad I'm very glad I got to do it regardless, but it was absolute mayhem, and it was so cool to see like the extent of what a business like that looks like how much work really goes into it, and how organized you truly have to be in order for things to not fall under the carpet. And like it was very, very stressful for me to do that job, because I was aware of like this, like how much responsibility I was truly carrying. And like he could be a little hot-tempered, and like every once in a while things would slip me by. It was my first time ever doing that job, and like some things that you just need to be on top of. They're very important productions, and I didn't want to mess anything up for him. But yeah, it was absolute mayhem. Like it just, and like that was some of the more like mundane tasks that I had to do for him, you know. Like I remember the day when he came into my office and he was like, Sophie, I need a leopard for the Harper's Bazaar shoot. Book me one. Walks out and I'm like, okay, Google, how to rent a leopard. Like, what? And we don't even have to get into the details of like using exotic animals on photo shoots. You know, this was a couple of years ago. I personally don't think that he would even do that anymore today. But yeah, so I found out through Google that there's these sort of like media animals that have agencies and trainers that are trained for productions, and they're like, they have their own model portfolios online, like same as a model would have a book. You can go in and like look at the portfolio of the work that these animals have been in. And he was like, the photographer was like, I don't want a small one, like I want a really big one. I was like, okay, you know. And so then I was sitting in his office with him, like watching this rapper music video with like his sunglasses on, and like the leopard sitting like right next to him being like, and the photographer's like, that one, I want that one. And I was like, all right, you got it. And then the leopard was brought into the studio with his trainer, like in a crate, and then was like on a leash. And obviously everything has to be like on the leopard's time. Like you can't the leopard is not, you know, is not an employee. He's not going to do what you want. You have to do what the leopard wants, and you have to work the whole production around the animal and the animal's temper and like timing and stuff like that. And like, oh my god, I learned so much. Like there's like literally any animal you could think of. Like if you ever see an elephant in a movie, like those are trained production animals. Like obviously you can't have the elephant delivered into the studio. Like at that point you have to go where the elephant is, which we did. Like he did shoots like that, and you can rent geese and monkeys and leopards. And like, I mean, I hope that that's sort of dying down now, because I know there's certain animals that like, you know, they get stimulated through being trained like that, but for other animals, like I'm sure that can't be good. But yeah, that was an interesting Tuesday morning, you know. And also the communication between him and like all of the people that he would regularly collaborate with and their agents, you know, like he had his agent, and then he would work with, let's say, like his go-to makeup artist that was also signed to an agency, and then the stylist also had his own agent. So I got to know all of the creative agencies in Germany that sort of repped the most high-end creatives, which was really good to sort of have an understanding of. And I got to do the same here in New York City. So it's interesting to see like what are the leading agencies locally, and like how do you communicate with those agents? Oh my God, he taught me how to write formal emails, like the way that I write email, like business emails now, or drafting like official letterhead letters. It was, guys, it was like kindergarten, but it was like whenever I would have to do an official letter, like on a letterhead, like especially for like legal things or contract work, we had this like fancy paper that had like a watermark imprint on it, and it was like thicker and nicer, and like that was the paper that we would use for like actually mailing stuff out to lawyers or whatever. And before I got to print on that paper, I would lay out it on my computer and write it, and then print it out on cheap paper, and then I had to go put it on his desk, and then he would take a red marker, I know, it's literally like middle school, and like make corrections. And he was such a stickler for like the proportions on an official letter as well, and like how to lay out it. And even with certain emails that I would write, you know, what should go into a paragraph, what should be broken up so that it's easier to have an overview of it, like how does the spacing work within the page. And sometimes he would even make me print it out a second time and get him to look it over a second time before I got to print it on photo paper, on the water print paper. But I'm honestly like, I'm glad he did, because now I'm very much aware of it. And sometimes I see people writing emails and they have no idea how to write a formal email and how to break it down and how to structure it in a sense that is easy to have an overview over. And like that stuff makes a difference whether your whole message gets read or it doesn't get read. So I'm like very aware of that now. Like even with my own interns, sometimes I'll have them draft emails on my behalf, and now I'll want to see them, and I'll be like, can you break that down into 2 paragraphs, or can you highlight this sentence or whatever, because it does make a difference. So I'm glad I learned that as well. It was obviously very interesting to get to see his lifestyle as well, you know. As a studio manager, I was sort of like running his life a little bit for a minute there, not just his work life, but I got to see all of the like behind the scenes of his personal life and what that looked like, you know, the nannies that took care of his kids and his relationship with his wife, and the luxuries that he had in his life, you know, the boats he owned, the cars he had, the other properties he owned. Same as with the photographer that I interned for in New York City, you know, he had so much real estate that he put his money into, and like all of these side business ventures that these guys were into, really made me think, you know, like, okay, these guys make decent money with their photography. What do they do? What do they do with it? What do you do with it? Like the guy here in New York City, he owned a really large studio that you could rent, and the like minimum daily rental fee was like $2,500. And he recently expanded that, so he now has a second location, like a smaller studio that is sort of a copy of the larger one. And like these are just smart guys. Like they were smart in business, they were smart in the way that they were running the thing. Like I had never thought about licensing the rights to my images before I worked for the guy in Germany, and I saw that he was making money through selling prints, and he made a lot of money through the photo books that he released, because his work is sort of like collector's style work, and a lot of people in Germany love his stuff and want to hang it up on their walls or want to own the book. And yeah, I'm very glad I got to do it. I oftentimes very much hated it, or was very, very nervous and anxious going into the office. I think that was also because it was a part-time job, and sometimes I felt like I was playing catch up and just trying to, you know, be on top of stuff and not mess up $150,000 production, which I didn't, knock on wood. You know, I gave it my best shot, and now I can say I did it, right, guys? Anyways, so that's my story time from Lessons from a Photographer's Office. I'm so glad you guys are in here. I'd love to hear what you guys think of this story, or if there's any questions about that time in my life, I'd love to answer them. Also, for anybody that's in here live on Instagram, like, send me a comment here and I can answer the questions for you guys. But yeah, and also let me know how you like this sort of story time style Rich Artist Fridays. Obviously, I love teaching you guys like tactical things for your business. But I mean, some of the most important things I learned through these times, you know, and not everything was here's how to do it. It was more just sort of observing others do it and learning by doing was definitely a big part of it. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why for example, I do this 8-week program that we did over the summer, and we're doing the second round of it right now, where I have 8 modules that I think are like the foundation to running a photography business. And one of the modules is internal business structures, and that is solely based on my time working as a studio manager for that photographer and the way that I structure my business internally now, because I think it's so important. But if you don't, like, if you've never seen it, you've never heard about it once, like you won't even know where to start. So that was very formative in that. I see a comment. Love the storytime stuff too. Interesting to hear other experiences. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I have so many stories. So if you guys want more, let me know, and maybe we'll do this every once in a while as a regular installment for the Rich Artist Fridays, because I think that's so fun. And yeah, do you still assist? Would you recommend to assist as a form of experience? I personally don't assist anymore. I stopped assisting a couple of years ago. I always recommend assisting, always, but I don't think it's a must. Like, in order to be a photographer, there's like 100 different ways that you can be successful. And I know very, very, very successful photographers that have never assisted in their life. Some of the advantages of it are that once you do become really successful and you hire your own assistants, you have an understanding of their job positions. Like, that is something that I feel very proud of, knowing that I have held those job positions and I know how much of a difference like $50 a day rate more can make, or how to make my crew feel appreciated, because I really wouldn't be able to do this job without my assistants. And just, you know, that way it's also easier to direct a crew. But you can also learn how to do that without having been an assistant yourself. Even if you don't have the time to like do like a 6-month internship or something like that, like even if you have 1 or 2 photographers that you have access to that you can ask to shadow every once in a while, like try to get on photo sets as often as you possibly can. Just by being able to play fly on the wall, you will pick up so many things that you otherwise would probably take you a lot longer to figure out on your own. And it's also always really good to get to see some other people's working styles, because then you can sort of like pick and choose what you want to adapt for yourself. So if you don't know where to start, in my opinion, I would send cold outreach emails to some photographers or DM them on Instagram and ask if there's ever an extra pair of hands needed on set, and if you can tag along, or even if you just offer to like film BTS on the phone for the photographer. Like, I get people sliding into my DMs and emailing me all the time asking if they can come on set with me. And based on whether they have set experience, I'll be like, yeah, either I'll put them on a list of photo assistants to hire when I need more assistants. But if they don't have set experience, like obviously I'm not going to have them set up lights for me or something, because I don't want them to injure themselves or break anything or endanger others. But there's always something that they can do, like whether it's like run out and grab coffee for everybody, or film behind the scenes on my phone for me. Like, I always need somebody to help me do the behind the scenes, because when I'm on set I always forget. Like, and if I don't have an assistant, I'll probably just set it up on a tripod and film a time lapse, but obviously I won't get as much usable footage because I'll forget about it and it'll be running for 30 minutes from the same angle, and who wants to see that, you know? So if you can, like, you can offer to do stuff like that for photographers, and I'm sure a lot of them would be like, yeah, why not? Like, as long as you don't get in the way, I'm sure they'd be happy to have you there. And it's like so valuable. So I highly recommend. Yeah, I hope that answered your question. Anyways, guys, is there any more questions from me? Otherwise, I'm gonna end it here, I think. I hope this was insightful for you guys. I hope it was entertaining. I see a comment. Thank you. You're so welcome. And yeah, thanks to everybody in here live too. Hi, Liz. And thank you to you guys that signed up on the actual Eventbrite. I have next week's Rich Artist Friday already programmed as well. So if you want to sign up for that, for everybody that's in here on the live stream on Instagram, if you guys want to be part of the actual Zoom meeting and come say hi to me, then sign up on my Eventbrite, grab a free ticket. It's always going to be free for you guys the Fridays. And yeah, I am so happy you guys were in here. I see another comment. Love it. Thank you. You're so welcome. And thank you for being in here. And thanks for saying hi this morning. And yeah, I will see you guys at the latest next week. The recording is always going to be up on my YouTube channel. So if you ever miss it, that's totally fine. It'll be up in a couple of days and you can catch up on it there. Leave me a comment there. I love seeing you guys interact with me on YouTube because it's like my new platform that I'm starting to build a community on. And if you're in a part of your career where you want more input on how to reach your next couple of goals as fast as possible, what to invest your time in, and what makes the most sense, exactly where you're standing in your career, then hit me up for one-on-one coaching. My coaching consultations are for free, where we can take a look at where you're standing, where you want to go, and how I can best advise you and help you in getting there as fast as you can possibly get there. So yeah, I love you guys so much. Thanks for saying hi, everybody, and all the different streams in here. It literally starting to feel like a broadcaster, but I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I'm having fun doing it. And yeah, I love you guys so much. Bye, you guys.